Exterior, courthouse, day, 1894. A man of 28 stands before a large building. He frowns, as if seeing something. Then he nods slightly. "How do? I'm Daft. I mean, it's my name, Harry Butler Daft. And I know you're probably making certain assumptions, seeing me standing here on high pavement, outside the Shire Hall, on a Monday morning, unshaven. You'll be saying to yourselves, oh, he's probably some terrible young man gone out and got himself half larruped on home ales and schooners of sweet white wine from the Talbot on Slab Square before he adjourned to the Empire Dance Hall for a bout of indecorous importuning, followed, if I know his sort, by a brush with the law in the grounds of the university, said fisticuffs happening as a result of non-payment of a restaurant bill in the city centre and a dodged taxi fare from the Flying Horse to Beeston." And you'd be right, but I can explain. I'm a footballer, which I realise is no excuse, but honestly, is it any wonder, eh? After the day we'd had. And by the way, when I say we, I mean Notts County. That's who I turn out for, which is highly significant in account of the fact that I'm here about to appear before the Beak. Were I not a county man, I think there's every chance I would never have got in any of that trouble on Saturday night, and my record would remain unblemished. I should say also, by way of mitigating circumstances, that I took the train back from Liverpool next to George Toon. He's our goalie. He's a twist hand in the lace market, but more importantly, he is a goalkeeper, which those of you who follow the game will understand the full significance of, to wit. Plus, when you think of how he works in that factory and how dusty it is, well, you can see he's thirsty all the time, so the odds were stacked against me. Especially after the day we'd had, eh? But enough of excuses. I don't need to make excuses. I need only to deal in fact. In which case, we need to go back a bit to January this year, when we were set to play Burnley in the Association Cup first round. Oh, the FA Cup. The very name transports you. It takes you places. Sorry, I need to stick to my thrust, which is, we were drawn at home, Trent Bridge back then. The official attendance, 8,000. The atmosphere was therefore magnificent. And we lined up in the traditional formation of 2-3-5. Yeah, don't talk to me about total football. We won the toss and kicked off. In the first half, we were playing into the wind. And what a wind it was. Jimmy Logan, who we'd signed in October from Aston Villa for £30, yes, you heard that right, £30, struggled to make any impression. Jimmy, who is a Scot, yet nevertheless a lovely man, happens to be, I think, one of the most skillful players in the English game. He's also the quickest thing I've ever seen in a sports stadium that wasn't wearing a striped vest and a muzzle. Yet, on that windswept afternoon, Jimmy barely got beyond the halfway line. The gale-force wind and the, shall we say, robust Burnley defending combining to ensure that all of his darting runs were thwarted. Jimmy himself said later, "The miserable sod spent the entire afternoon trying to kick me up in the air," which I think is a more accurate reflection of what actually went on. And while I do apologise for quoting Jimmy verbatim, I have to reiterate once more that he is Scottish and therefore predisposed to the colourful use of bad language. Anyway, the game was played at a furious pace, and with a minute to go until half-time, it looked like we're going at 0-0. But then, a long kick from our centre half-back and captain, David Calderhead, suddenly held up in the wind, foxing Espy, the Burnley kicker-in-chief, right half-back. And in a thrice, Logan was through. Full speed at last, his black and white shirt flapping in the gale, the crowd roaring him on. And as the ball dropped, we wondered whether he'd faint and try and deceive the goalie. But as Jimmy himself said afterwards, I just thought I'd bang the bloody thing as hard as I could. And indeed, he did. And Notts County had the lead, a lead which we defended for the rest of that half and all of the second. And by God, what a trial that final 45 minutes was. Burnley threw all they had at us, and I must confess there were moments when I thought we'd never hang on. Sam Donnelly, our inside right, a coal miner, and a man not noted for his loquaciousness, shouted to us before the last corner, "Kick it, bite it, head it or punch it, ball or player, I don't care, but we will not give way now." Oh, it was inspiring. But then again, his Uncle Tom had been part of the siege at Mafeking, so he knew a thing or two about digging in till the relief came. And come it did. as the referee blew his whistle at last and the Notts fans swarmed onto the pitch to cheer us into the next round, there Burton Wanderers awaited. Now, I'm not going to say too much about this game, other than to point out that it was played at the Derby Turn, Burton-on-Trent. Oh, you know it. I mean, this is a pitch, not so much with a slope, as a rendering of the Cresta Run in miniature. On an icy day, it is a truly terrifying experience to sprint onto a long ball and realise that there's every chance not only that you will slide off the end of the pitch before you can stop, but that you'll be well past the refreshment stand and halfway through the gentleman's conveniences before you can lay your hands on anything which might slow your progress and act as a brake. No, please, don't even think that. Anyway, the Wanderers were used to this escarpment, so at our training camp the week before at the Star and Garter pub, Hazelford Ferry, we hatched a brilliant plan by which Theo Harper, our right back, another collier, and Jack Hendry, our left back, he's a gardener, they would man for man mark the two Cates brothers, Burton's danger men, and the players most adept at using the slope. They would track, shadow, and if all else failed, kick the Burton wingers long before they could use their home advantage against us. And as it turned out, the plan worked a dream. And we hammered them 2-1. Sam scoring from a goalmouth scramble and then Jimmy adding the second from the penalty spot. And that, ladies and gentlemen, saw us into the quarter-finals. The quarter-finals. The sharp end. And who did we play? Well, the Daily Express paper put it thus. When the news of the draw for the quarter-final reached Nottingham, it could only be equalled by the agitation felt if the British government had declared war with Russia or France, which honestly is overdoing it a bit. But there was considerable excitement in the city because Notts had drawn, I can't say the name, I can't. The bottom of Arkwright Street, the town ground, they draw Nottingham Forest. Now, let's not be partisan, I want to get through this. And the first thing to be said about this game was that 15,000 spectators journeyed past the Midland station and into the Forest ground to see it. The takings for the day were £650, the second highest ever for a cup match in this country, beaten only by the semi-final of the previous year when Blackburn Rovers had played Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, I hear you ask, why all of this fiscal and statistical detail? We want to know what happened in the game. Well, it was a draw, 1-1, after extra time, nothing more to say. Except, I didn't actually witness anything beyond the 4th minute of the match, having sustained at that moment a paralysing kick in the gonads, visited on me in a quite deliberate manner by McInnes, the Forest left wing and eventual goal scorer after 38 minutes. As Jimmy said to him when he turned away in celebration, "You shouldn't even be on the pitch, you sod, the way you kicked that wheel out on the balls." And he was right. Except McInnes was on the pitch, whereas I was in the city hospital, my legs quite wide apart, wrapped in a cold compress and chewing aspirin. But justice was done in the end, since on the cusp of half-time, Daniel Bruce, our inside left, rifled a shot into the top left-hand corner of their goal. I heard then that he turned to the Forest fans and he shouted, "That one's for Harry." It was a great moment. One of them assaulted him, but we all agreed it was a point worth making. Alas, though, we couldn't go on and win the game, despite having the better of it, then and in extra time. So in the end, 1-1 stood, and a replay was the result. Of course, the draw took place before that happened, so we knew, should we beat Forest, who we would play in the semis. And that team would be none other than the mighty Blackburn Rovers, a great side, the greatest side, undoubtedly the favourites for the cup. And yet, we felt sure we could take them. For all their skill, they were slow at the back, and Jimmy, Daniel and I were certain we could run them ragged if we were just given half a chance, if we could just beat Forest in the replay. Beat them? We flipping stuffed them. 4-1. Jimmy getting the opener, Daniel a brace, and Sam Donnelly the other. I never came close, though I did toe McInnes right up the arse when he tried to head a corner. So for me, the day was nigh on perfect. Yet always, at the back of your mind in these moments, is the fear of failure. Every step you take towards your goal, every round that gets you closer to your ultimate dream, the potential for disappointment, for terrible and crushing anticlimax becomes greater and greater. I'm sorry, I'm a Notts player. You have to vector in disappointment. And don't forget, we were the only second division team left. The day we beat Forest, the bookmakers announced the odds as to who would eventually lift the cup. Blackburn Rovers, evens. Bolton Wanderers, 5-2. Sheffield Wednesday, 72. All first division teams. And dear old Notts County, 8-1. Rank outsiders. Yet, we had beaten the old enemy. And we did genuinely think We had pace to trouble Lancastrians, so gradually, as we got back to training, we learned only to listen to the voices we'd heard in our heads when the draw had first been announced. The voices which said, "Come on, my Ducks, we can do this, we can win the semi-final, we're Notts County." And that's how we stayed, until we walked out at Bramall Lane in Sheffield on Saturday, March the 10th, 1894. Then we collectively filled our pants. You see, it was terrifying. 20,000 in the ground, and hundreds more we knew back in Nottingham, gathered by the local newspaper officers, outside the Line Hotel, anywhere where telegrams might be expected to arrive, thence to relay the condition of the match. The match, it was a blur. The start especially, partly the nerves, partly the realisation that those pedestrian Blackburn defenders were a little less pedestrian than we'd anticipated. And Chippendale, Dewar and Anderson, they looked like they could take us on their own. But we hadn't come this far just to roll over. And gradually, after the first 10 minutes, we started to assert a bit of control. And I started to get more and more room out on the left. More and more room. Until after 15 minutes, I took a pass from Alf Shelton and instantly looked up, expecting the tackle. But no tackle came. I wasn't pressed at all. Haydock and Brandon were so worried about Jimmy and Daniel, they'd turned their backs and were chasing after them, attempting to get on their goal side, leaving me with a clear run. So run I did, dropping my right shoulder, then slipping the ball to my left, before I glanced up once more, hoping to see the captain making a run for the back post. But he was far off, nursing an injury. I looked the other way, hoping to see Jack advancing on the overlap. But he wasn't there either, so I ran on further, the ball out in front, my ears pounding, my chest screaming, except there was no one to pass to. And as I bore down on the goal, frankly, I was devoid of ideas. Smack the bloody thing, you great big useless wazzock! You see, the greats know how to behave in a crisis. Jimmy knew what to do, leather it. So I did. In all honesty, I didn't catch it cleanly, but a daisy cutter's as good as a thunderbolt if the goalie doesn't see it coming. And he didn't. He didn't see it at all. In fact, I think the ball was already nestling in the net before he started to dive. I'd done it! I'd scored in the FA Cup semi-final. Harry Daft had rifled in the only goal. Yeah. The only goal. We'd beaten. And, well, let me read you this from the Northern Daily Telegraph. The unexpected has happened, and the favourites of the English Cup have been knocked out in the semi-final by a team which up to little over a week ago was regarded as a rank outsider. That was us. That was Notts County. And shortly after 5 o'clock, the news had reached the city, zinging down telegraph wires and bursting out onto the waiting streets, so that by the time we returned from Sheffield on the 1840 Saloon Special, a train with no fewer than 20 carriages, the largest train ever sent out from Nottingham, by then several thousand people were waiting for us, thronged along the platform edge and strung across the bridge of the Midland Station. They were beyond there too. So that as we tried to make our way to the club headquarters on Clumber Street, cramped in a horse and carriage, the crowd of cheering supporters had become so great we had to disembark at the end of Station Street and walk the rest of the way. And every step we took, a hand slapped us on the back, a beer froth moustache leaned in and a voice said, "Don't you dare muck it up now and foul up." We didn't need telling. And I can admit to you here that the time between the semi and the final, God, it was hard. You couldn't concentrate at work, at home, at all. That fear again. And now, worse than ever, we were 90 minutes from immortality, 90 minutes from a time when the city would remember our names forever. Well, the 31st of March 1894 finally came, and we travelled to Goodison Park, Liverpool, where 37,000 people gathered for the match, and in truth, for the ritual slaughter of Notts County. We'd had our day in the sun. Second Division Notts had slayed their Goliath when they beat Blackburn in the semi. Now, against the also mighty Bolton Wanderers, they would at last get their comeuppance. We didn't. We were bloody magnificent. Right from the kick-off, we took control, handling our nerves better than they, and also, it seemed, on a sweltering day when thick cloud exacerbated the already humid conditions by being the fitter team too. Of course, these aren't in themselves game-changing matters, but one other thing was. I scored a bloody hat-trick! He did too. Jimmy Logan got 3 of our 4 goals. Arthur Watson and Clark, our outside right, he got the other, as we routed the Wanderers 4-1. Had it not been for Sutcliffe in the Bolton goal, we would have had 6. As to Jimmy, the Athletic newspaper said, 3 goals out of 4 in a final tie is an enduring testimonial to Logan's brilliance and confirms his reputation as one of the deadliest shots in the British Isles. He is. And I played alongside him on one of the proudest days of my life, in this club's life, and I shall never forget it. Unlike much of the rest of that Saturday. You see, after 17 years of trying to win the cup, of trying to bring the silverware back to Nottingham, for many of us to finally do so, well, that was a cause for something beyond celebration. It was a cause to get paralytically drunk, and we did. But as I said before, there were other mitigating factors. For a start, the Notts directors had provided us all with luncheon baskets to be had on the train as we returned from Liverpool Central Station. Unfortunately, they'd also provided a dozen bottles of champagne, which it turns out doesn't mix too well with brown ale and pork pie. What is more, any intention I might have had to retire quietly to my digs in Sneinton as soon as we returned to Nottingham, thereby removing the possibility of worsening my inebriated state, that was stymied by George, our goalie. Remember goalies? Who said it would be wicked to pass up the chance to celebrate with all those who wanted to cheer us on in our moment of victory. And he was right. It would have been. So I don't care. I'm here now to answer for what happened after the night became truly operatic. Because that night, ladies and gentlemen, that night when we stepped off the train and journeyed once more to Notts County headquarters at the Line Hotel, that night will be with me until the day I die. It was 10:30 as we pulled up. By then, Station Street was solid. Thousands of people, thousands, had come to greet us, cheering and shouting, while one fellow banged a drum and a line of youths sat on the railway walls and banged their heels against the enamel advertising hoardings, keeping time to the drums. Boom, boom, boom. And then something amazing happened. A woman began to hum, and the man next to her picked it up, and soon the whole crowd had joined in with the same unmistakable tune. Handel's "See the Conquering Heroes Come." And we did. On an open carriage, pulled by 4 horses, we rode and we showed the cup. Up Station Street, along Carrington Street, onto Listergate, and then finally passing into Clumbers Street, all the way, black and white bunting hung from the lampposts, along with many supporters. Chinese lamps and flags had been strung up too, while the trams which normally passed the streets could no longer run. Such was the crush of the crowd, and still through it all was heard, "See the conquering heroes come." Until at last we were outside the Line Hotel. Well, you know what happened then. That's why I'm here, outside the court. But like I say, I don't care. I don't regret it. After the day we'd had, eh? A day when we had become heroes, when we had conquered all. We were Notts County, and we'd won the FA Cup.